This here is an air cleaner. It's made out of an old baking dish.
Okay, this DIY video is going to be a water pump and thermostat DIY change for any S65 powered E90, E92, or E93 M3, as well as some Hartka Z4s. You're going to start by undoing the Torx screws on the intake air box. One here, back there, one there, a couple back here, all along this side. You're going to have two standard screws holding this trumpet on. And then also, you're going to want to remove the entire top plenum box. Okay, so once you're at this point, remove the lower airbox piece, which is just two 10 millimeters. And then also we're going to have to take off they're somewhat hidden now, but there's plastic pieces that cover the ignition coils. Those also need to come off. Once you have the lower airbox removed, the coil covers simply just pull off, rubberized pressure clips. The driver's side or left-hand side, if you're not in the United States, you can just slide it out, no problem. This breather hose gets out of your way. However, on the passenger side or right-hand side of the vehicle, the cover is pretty well lodged in there, so you will have to loosen the two 10 millimeters. Actually, remove them entirely to get your expansion tank out of the way, just to get this plastic piece out of your work area. Once you've done that, there's an oil separator valve on either side. I'll focus this a little better for you. Of the valve cover. There are, looks like, 3, maybe 4 Torx bolts on there. T25 or 27 or T30 looks like. Those have to come out and be removed from the plenum airbox to get to the next step, which is removing or loosening the 8 individual hose clamps that hold the throttle bodies to the plenum. Okay, so now we have the expansion tank is loose. Once we got that up, pull it out of the way, the coil cover will slide right out. After that, this step is technically optional. The 2 oil separators, they're T27 Torx. There are 4 of them per side. They don't come fully out without the plenum removed, but it will give you better access to the 8 clamps that hold the plenum box to the throttle bodies. So we've gone ahead and done that. At this point, if you have the OSV bolts loose, or if you want to elect to skip that step, now is the time. I need to get a light real quick. There are hose clamps, 6 millimeter or standard screw, 1 per throttle body, so there are 8, 4 per side. Loosen those, but don't take them all the way off because it would be a huge pain. These are the main linkage between the throttle bodies and the plenum box. Once you've loosened all 8 of those, on the back, right there's a large plastic breather hose that you will have to remove once you've moved the plenum box up and out of the way. I'll show you a little bit better view of that on the next step here. Probably. Once you've taken the intake manifold plenum cover off, there's a couple steps that are kind of hard to see with the box on. Focus here for you. This is the breather. You just have to press down on this on both sides with your hand, and then it pulls straight down. And then once you've tilted the box forward, there's another very small one right here, same style connector. Just pinch it between your pointer and thumb, and it'll pop right out. Plenum box lifts off. At that point, you should have a very nice view of your engine. And right now, you can see the thermostat housing and the water pump beneath it. Okay, so with your plenum box removed, this is your thermostat housing. There are a couple of things here. This is the coolant return that goes to your overflow bottle. There's a little stainless steel clip here that you want to take out of the way. This whole thing slides out of the way. However, don't lose this clip, it's very important. Here you have a coolant temperature sender. This, you just pinch with your pointer finger, pull up, that comes out. A lot of DIYs for certain projects say the fuel rails have to either be loosened and removed, or just kind of bent out of the way. This little clip, it may look intimidating, but there's a lot of movement here, and that's really all you need to get this off. There are 3 10mm bolts that secure the entire thermostat housing. So yeah, once you've got those 3 bolts, these 2 connectors off, and the 2 main radiator hoses, you should be able to wiggle that entire assembly out of there. So, if you're at this point, you're doing pretty well. We're only about 45 minutes in right now. Check the condition of your O-rings on these 2 pipes back here. Very, very important that those are in good condition. If you find any defects, nicks, discoloration, dryness, replace them. Don't even think about it. The thermostat piece down there that connects to the water pump, you're going to want to take either a mild wire brush very gently or some Scotch-Brite just to clean up that residue before you put the new gasket and water thermostat back on it. At this point, if you want to suck the coolant out of that crevice with a turkey baster, a vacuum bleeder, or something like that, you can actually check the condition of your water pump impeller to see if you need to do it or not. We're just going to do it anyway, just because we're already here. It's hardly any more effort. But again, at this point, your engine should look like that, and your thermostat housing with thermostat in it should look a lot like that. Our new BMW thermostat is right here. Same thing, just a lot less crappy. So what we're going to do next is just work this one out by hand, put this new one in there, then we're going to go ahead and clean up the housing on the engine. Okay. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and take the belt off of this pulley for the water pump drive. There are 2 belts on this engine. The one we're dealing with is for alternator water pump only. There's a tensioner straight down. I have my offset wrench on it. It's a 14mm. There it is. Jake's showing it to us here. So all you're going to do, you're going clockwise. Once you've taken the load off of it, the belt is loose. And then you're just going to work it off the water pump pulley on the front, just like that. And then you're going to put the tension back on it, let it go, and then there are 3 10mm bolts that hold the pulley to the water pump. Okay, so we have our water pump pulley off. I was wrong in the last segment, there are 4 10mm, not 3. The 4 actual bolts that hold the water pump to the thermostat housing are T30 Torx. There are 4 of them. That's the next step for us. We're going to take those out. And then the water pump, it's got a fairly large O-ring on it. You're going to need to give it a pretty good tug. And if your engine's hot like ours, make sure you're wearing gloves. So you're going to get a lot of coolant on yourself unless you've drained the block ahead of time. So yeah, next step, remove the 4 T30s and pull the water pump out. Now if you get this far and your water pump is still kind of fighting you, BMW kind of gave you a neat little thing where if you take 2 of the T30 bolts you just took out of the 4 corners and put them in the middle slots, just thread them in by hand, then torque them down evenly back and forth. You want to make sure it pulls straight out. It will gradually walk the pump out for you. So again, if you can't pull it out by hand, sometimes you can't, you've got this option. And there you have it. Water pump and thermostat are both out of the car. Here's our old one on the right, and our new one on the left. The water pump's actually okay on this car. We're still going to replace it because composite water pumps have a performance life, and this one's already exceeded it. So, yeah. So once you've cleaned up everything, you've gotten the water pump back inside the thermostat housing area there. You've gotten the pulley back on there, gotten the belt back on the pulley. One thing that's pretty often easy to overlook is put the cap back on the tensioner. It's a little plastic cap that you have to snap off to get to that bolt. Make sure you do that. We used a abrasive stripping wheel just to clean up the thermostat housing area there. Looks nice and pretty now. We've got our new thermostat installed in our thermostat housing. That's going to be our next step. Installation, exactly the reverse of removal, which we showed you a little bit earlier. So we're going to do that and then come back to it. So, we have our thermostat housing back on. We've got the ECU temperature sender plug reinstalled. We've got the fuel rail clipped back into the upper housing there. The next step for us is going to be reconnecting the two radiator hoses and the smaller bleed hose that goes back to your expansion tank here. There is a 2-piece retaining clip for the radiator hose down there. I didn't cover removal of that just because it's not required, but we have it out of the way. I'm going to clip that back together, and we'll come back once that's all buttoned up. Okay, so at this point we have it all completely buttoned back up. We actually went ahead and put a little coolant in it just to make sure that we're not getting any obvious leakage from our 2 metal pipes back there. It all looks pretty good. The O-rings were still really nice and gummy on this thing. This car's got 121,000 miles on it, which is pretty high for one of these, so probably okay there. Next step is going to be putting the plenum back on. Don't forget, again, you're going to have to plug this one in first, then slide the back end of the plenum down, connect to this big guy back here, then set it down into these cups. Tighten down your 8 hose clamps, tighten back down your oil separators if you elected to loosen them in the first place, and then we'll come back for the final button up here. Okay, so we have the plenum back on. One thing we noticed was got the lower push clip inserted back on here, no problem. The back one went on just fine. But once we got this thing seated down nice and solid on the throttle bodies, the 4th and 8th throttle body had a tiny little air gap in them. And the only way we could get that to go away was to loosen all the clamps up again and actually use a rubber mallet on the back of the box. That got it to seat really nicely. It's back in the oil separators, which we've bolted back down onto the valve covers now. So we're all good to go, except for we need to put the coil covers back on the valve covers. Need to get our expansion tank back hard mounted. Need to put our tube back on here. Need to put our lower air box, upper air box, and then we're going to start it up, bleed the coolant, and we should be good to go at that point. So we have it all back together now. The only thing we have to do yet is the cooling system. My preferred method is once we set it back down, start up the engine, rev it to 2000 RPM for about 15 seconds, then shut it back down. Then open the bleed screw about halfway, open your coolant reservoir cap, fill it until your red stick protrudes, and then make sure shut up, Jake. Make sure that the level doesn't drop any further, as you will be purging air with this valve. Once it is stabilized, close your bleed screw, close this back up, go for a drive. Set your heat to maximum on the inside of the car. If you've got heat and your temperature is looking alright, just drive it around for a couple of days, check your coolant level again, and then add as necessary. But yeah, hope that helped. Bye.